Right, our lesson for today is going to build on what we learned yesterday, which was adding positive and negative mixed numbers. Now we are going to do subtracting. Subtracting positive and negative mixed numbers. So this is Unit 1, Lesson 14. We're subtracting positive and negative mixed numbers. All right, let's start with our Cornell notes. Write your name, period, and date. Our objective is students will be able to evaluate an expression with mixed numbers by adding and subtracting fractions. And our essential question, how do you subtract positive and negative mixed numbers? Go ahead and fold up your papers with 2 columns, one for questions, one for notes. Today's lesson is going to be very similar to our last lesson. The only difference is now we are subtracting mixed numbers instead of adding. All right, so let's review just very quickly how to change subtraction to addition. And we'll use integers to help us. So for example, if we have negative 6 minus 4, we would change the subtraction to addition and take the opposite of the second number. So we would write negative 6 plus this positive 4 becomes a negative 4. So we have negative 6 plus negative 4. So we will be doing the same idea, but now instead of integers, we're going to be working with mixed numbers. So this question is, how do you change subtraction to addition? That's just a review. We've done that before. So what's new today is subtracting mixed numbers. So when we subtract mixed numbers, let's take a look at an example. Subtraction is still more difficult, so we are still going to keep the same idea of changing subtraction to addition. So if we have negative 6 3/4 minus negative 3 and 1/2, the first thing we're going to do is change it to addition, and then we're back to what we learned in the last lesson. So our justification, the first thing we do when we see subtraction, this is a subtraction problem, so we're going to change it to addition. And we're going to add the opposite. So I'm going to change the operation to addition, and my second number becomes the opposite. So I rewrite negative 6 3/4 plus a positive 3 1/2. And now we are back to adding mixed numbers, which we know how to do from the last lesson. So the second step is we're going to change to fractions. So we need to change these from mixed numbers into fractions. So I start with a negative number. I'm changing negative 6 3/4, 6 times 4, and then plus 3, and we keep the denominator the same. Then I'm going to add a positive number. Those signs don't change. I do 3 times 2 plus 1, all over the same denominator of 2. So I get 6 times 4 is 24, plus 3 is 27. It's still negative. Negative 27 over 4, plus positive 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. I get positive 7 over 2. Now in order to add fractions, I need to find a common denominator. So my third step is to find a common denominator, just like we did in the last lesson. So I take my chart. I have two denominators, 4 and 2. So I need to find what they have in common, multiples in common. So 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12, 4 times 4 is 16. 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 6, 2 times 3, or 2 times 4 is 8. And I have 4 in common. So I need to turn 27 fourths, negative 27 fourths, into a denominator of 4, something over 4. And I need to change positive 7 halves into something over 4. And this one still is negative. So I know 4 times 1 is 4, so I do 27 times 1 is 27. Then I do 2 times 2 is 4, 7 times 2 is 14, and this is positive, so this one is positive. So now I have two new fractions. I have negative 27 fourths. My two new fractions are negative 27 fourths plus a positive 14 over 4. And my next step is to find the sign of the answer using my foldable. So I see negative 27 and a positive 14 over 9. So I'm looking at adding integers, and if I open it up, I see they have different signs. So if it's different signs, I subtract the numbers and use this sign of the number with the larger absolute value. So I go back to the original, and I see negative 6 3/4 and positive 3 1/2. So I know that negative 6 3/4 is further away from 0, so I'm going to take the sign of this number because it has a larger absolute value. So my answer is going to be something negative. And then my foldable tells me to subtract the numbers because they have different signs. So I take 27 minus 14 gives me 13, and the denominator stays the same. So I subtract. And then step 6 is to convert it back to a mixed number. So I do 13 divided by 4. 4 goes into 13 3 times to give me 12, and the remainder is 1. So my whole number part is 3. Remember, the number is still negative. I get negative 3 1/4 as my final answer. So the question we're going to write here is, how do you subtract mixed numbers? All right, turn to the back so you can try an example. Example 2. Let's try negative 9 1/2 minus 2 1/3. Please pause the video here so students can try this independently. Okay, hopefully you had enough time to solve this on your own. Let's check to see if you got it correct. So the first thing that we have to do is change to addition. That was the new step that we had today. So I'm going to take my operation, change it to addition. Second number becomes the opposite. So the first number stays the same, it's negative 9 1/2. Then it becomes addition. And the opposite of positive 2 1/3 is negative 2 1/3. Then the second step is to change to fractions. And we do that by multiplying the denominator and adding the numerator. So the first number is negative. Make sure you keep the negative sign. I have 9 times 2 plus 1 all over 2. And I am adding another negative number, so make sure it stays negative. 2 times 3 plus 1 all over 3. So I get 9 times 2 is 18 plus 1 is 19. It's still negative. Negative 19 over 2 plus, this is 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. Negative 7 over 3. So make sure you don't lose the signs when you are changing to improper fractions. Then my third step is to find common denominators. So I'm going to take 2 and 3, those are the denominators, and I'm going to find a common one. 2 times 1, 2 times 2, 2 times 3, 2 times 4, and 2 times 5, then 3 times 1, 3 times 2, 3 times 3, 3 times 4, and 3 times 5. So we find a common denominator of 6. So I need to write negative 19 over 2 as something over 6, and negative 7 over 3 as something over 6. So I know 2 times 3 is 6, and 19 times 3, the number is negative, so this needs to be negative. 19 times 3 is 57, so I get negative 57 over 6. Over here, 3 times 2 is 6, so I multiply by 2 on the numerator. 7 times 2 is 14, and this number is negative, so this number has to still be negative. So now I have common denominators. I'm going to rewrite it as negative 57 over 6 plus a negative 14 over 6. So step 4, I'm going to look in my foldable to find the sign of my answer. Using the foldable. And then number 5, I need to decide if I am adding or subtracting. So I take my foldable. We are adding negative 57 over 6 plus negative 14 over 6. They have the same sign, negative, negative. So I'm adding integers, and I see they have the same sign. So if they have the same sign, I add the numbers, and keep the sign. Add the numbers, keep the sign. So here I'm going to add, and this is negative, negative. I'm going to keep the sign, so the answer is still negative. Then I take negative 57, I'm going to add them up. 57 plus 14 gives me 71. Negative 71 over 6. And then my last step is to convert back to mixed number. So I take 71 divided by 6. So 6 times 1 is 6. And I bring down the 1, I get 6 times 1 is 6, with a remainder of 5. So my final answer is negative 11 and 5/6. Check your work, make sure you got the correct answer. If you didn't, please find your mistake. Okay, here's your homework. 4 problems. We have negative 5.5 minus 3.5. Number 2 is 7 2/3 minus 3 5/6. Number 3 is negative 4 5/6 minus negative 8 1/3. And the last one is negative 5.5 minus negative 2 1/5. Make sure you do this on a separate paper.